It's time I made myself a scarecrow.
I like to try something new with every project I undertake, and this one would soon take me into uncharted territory. But first up, the one thing I've always wanted to create the look of is long wild grass and a vehicle making its way through it. So today I'm going to make that happen and show you some of the steps I took to create a small display base for my Hellcat. So to recap, I took you through the build and then the painting and weathering of this M18, and I left you with the tease of how I created the foliage around the turret. So let's look at that. The secret weapon here is the micro leaves from Green Stuff World. Thousands and thousands of tiny in-scale green leaves. Now the other secret weapon here is sea foam. This is a noxious weed that grows through Eurasia, but just so happens to look like little trees. This lot was packaged through JoeFix, but you should be able to pick this up from your local hobby store, or absolute worst case, you could get it on Amazon or Etsy, I believe. It is then just a matter of applying white glue to the sections you want the foliage and then sprinkling those leaves over, or dabbing the whole branch directly into that pot of leaves. Now I could have used oregano, which I pointed out in one of the build videos for this foliage. However, this Green Stuff product is far more consistent in shape and color. It's just far superior. Adding multiple layers of the foliage bulks it up quickly. Applying the glue and then the leaves is time consuming, but far more controlled that way than trying to do this using a spray adhesive, say. It produces a really great looking in-scale piece of foliage, which gives the model an organic element, softening the look and adding a sense of realism. For the base, I'm using my tried and true circular base format. Now that circle was cut using my foam wire cutter, and I just looked to set about creating a balance over the scene. The telegraph pole adds the height and the scale that I like to include at the rear of my displays usually, although that wouldn't make it through to the final product. I'd spent a lot of time on the interior of the model, so I thought by carving a gentle slope to the landscape, it may help showcase the interior. Creating an incline or differing levels makes for a far more interesting display than just a flat ground does in most cases. I'm sure you've seen me dressing these bases before, but this time I did it prior to applying the groundwork, which is something I don't think I've done before. This is styrene sheet with a 3M mounting film on the rear and a satin black vinyl on the face. Now it has enough flexibility to roll around the foam, and the mounting film has enough tack to it to hold it in place. I have integrated graphics into these displays before. However, the scarcity of a plain and simple black base is all that's required in this instance. After the edges are trimmed to follow the basic lay of the land, the black is masked and the VMS Smart Mud is pulled from the drawer and applied to the foam. The Smart Mud has an odd texture and it takes a bit of working into the surface, but in 5 or 10 minutes or so, I'm able to start smoothing it out with my fingertip. Now this can get quite messy, so a glove is recommended, especially if you're planning on doing any modeling afterward. A test fit allows me to press the tracks into the mud and I can leave an impression. However, that mud can be a little bit sticky, so it's best done after a couple of hours just to let the mud dry off a little bit. Now the Smart Mud is great all by itself, but additional grains and pebbles can be sprinkled over the area, with the larger ones gently pressed into the surface so they don't look like they're floating over the top of it. Leaving the base to set overnight, I then mist it in isopropyl alcohol to break the surface tension over it, and a diluted mix of white glue can be dripped over the groundwork with a pipette. This will attach and seal all of the dirt and pebbles I applied the night before. Once the glue had time to dry, the various colours in the base were integrated with a broken application of Tamiya flat earth. I'm allowing that dark mud colour to still influence it, and then any higher contours or raised elements would be painted in buff. I'll look to integrate those tones a little more with enamels later in the build, but for now that sets the colour for my groundwork. Now to the wild grass and the thing that I was really looking forward to having a go at. This is a costume fur, I believe it's a polyester, and you should be able to pick this up from a haberdashery shop or a costume shop or possibly even a dressmaker. By cutting the fibres as low as I can and then batching them into clumps, I can place the stems into blobs of white glue. A gentle tease keeps the fibres standing in an upright position, and then by continuing the process and working over the area, clump by clump, I then end up with a pretty convincing looking wild grass, I think. So much easier than I was thinking it was going to be. I felt a tree was a little more appropriate for this scene, so the telegraph pole was sent back to the spares box and would live to fight another day. To bring life to the tree, it is the exact same process I used earlier. However, I weave small amounts of polyfiber through the fronds, as this will bulk it up and allow it to hold a much greater volume of those micro leaves, giving it a more lush look and better looking result. As before, the process is the same. I apply the white glue over the areas that require leaves and sprinkle them with foliage. This can be done multiple times to create volume and life to those areas over the tree. It's important to keep the foliage over the appropriate areas and not over the branches, but with a little care, that is an easy thing to achieve, and before too long, that tree had come to life. And that is where I took a step outside my comfort zone. Love it or hate it, AI or artificial intelligence is here to stay, so it was time to embrace the technology and see just how far I could take it. My idea was to create a scarecrow with an ominous warning for the advancing allies. Now, I began by asking ChatGPT to create me a scary looking scarecrow, and after a few edits I came up with my guy.
That's my guy.
From there, I could import the photo into a program called Meshy. Now, this is a program that converts a two-dimensional image into a three-dimensional object of which I can print. Now, speaking of printers, I've been trialing the new Hellcat X1 from Create, and this was the perfect opportunity to put that to the test. The Create Hellcat X1 has really opened up so many opportunities for me, and I'll be looking to integrate print from it in upcoming builds where I can. It's a 16K resin printer that produces incredibly sharp detail, making it perfect for this type of thing. Now, I've dabbled into 3D print before, but would consider myself a complete novice. However, features like auto leveling and the quick release plate has really brought the joy back into this branch of the hobby. Be sure to check them out. I'll leave a link down below. Looking at my scarecrow was exciting and scary all at the same time. Scary just how quickly this technology has evolved, but exciting as to what it might mean for our hobby. I primed him in Mr. Surfacer Black and tried my hand at painting with glazes, although I never seem to be able to get a result I'm looking for using this technique. I did, however, use oil washes to create my shadows and line work, and that really brought the look together, so I was pretty happy in the end. To create a more authentic looking scarecrow, the legs and other cavities around the figure were stuffed with straw colour static grass. I talk about adding organic elements to models a lot to soften the look, and this is the perfect demonstration of that being the case. The message on the signboard was carefully painted with a fine brush, and my scarecrow was good to go. Additional pockets of wild grass were added, as were some finer and shorter strands of static grass to help the flow of the vegetation. To better help integrate the groundwork in with the tall grass, that same straw colour static grass was scattered around the ground, along with other pieces of debris like fine roots and leaf scatter. Just like before, the IPA is sprayed to break the surface tension, and then the diluted Mod Podge is applied over the top, although I suspect this mix could have been a little more diluted. I created a standalone video about how I painted these figures, so if you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to check it out. Figure painting can be so much fun, and having a quality figure helps greatly. These two guys are from Panzer Art. The figures could then be glued in place and the earth around their feet leveled out to ensure that they were standing square. I'm using the Smart Mud for this process, and I'm also using that to create the look of churned earth around the tank tracks. The tones of the groundwork were matched a little more closely to the tones on the model, with a light round of enamel washes using the same colours I'd used to create my weathering effects. Another element I added to the scene was some photo etch barbed wire. It was first dipped in a blackening fluid and then rolled around a paintbrush to coil it, and then fed through the grass as another deterrent for the allies. It looked quite authentic, and I can testify by all the little cuts in my fingers it behaved a lot like actual barbed wire. A small vinyl cut lettering title could be applied, and the standoff had come to a close. The Hellcat is one of my favourite allied vehicles, so to see it now in its final destination was really quite rewarding. I think it's important when creating a display base like this to gently redirect focus from the vehicle itself and ensure that there is a side story or another point of engagement in order for a piece like this to be successful. It's almost a case of the vehicle being so much part of the scene that surrounds it, in that an element like the figures or the Scarecrow call for the attention. It's that point of connection that draws the viewer in and then invites them to explore further around the model that is essentially the hero piece. I hope that makes sense. I think the gentle slope and the scale of the tree helps add a dynamic to the piece, and I was absolutely thrilled with how that wild grass came together, and you'll be seeing that again sometime soon. The biggest revelation for me though was the possibility that AI paired with 3D printing provides. It's far from perfect, but to think what it might be in even just a couple of years will blow your mind, so I would suggest watch this space very carefully. But what do you guys think with this one? Was there something here you will try for yourself? What about the impact of AI on this hobby and what that might mean for us all? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And of course, what video wouldn't be complete without thanking my Patreons? I've 3 different levels of support on that site, and you can just join in as a free member if that's what you're comfortable with. It's all appreciated and valued, so I hope to see you over there. There is a link down below. But you know what? Even giving this video a like helps a lot, as it does when you join in the comments down below. It's all appreciated. Remember guys, this is the greatest hobby in the world. Share it with your family and share it with your friends, and let's be proud of what we do. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
Here, Scarecrow, wanna play ball?